Urban high martial power space interstellar journey. This world is very interesting, ancient doors blend with modern times. A mysterious meteorite impact brought a disaster to Earth and completely changed its future destiny. Entering the college, participating in international competitions, and safeguarding peace on Earth. Gu Men's orphan grew up in a modern city, and he will lead his female companions to step out of the Earth together, resist alien invasion, and guard his homeland. All of this began in the New Star River era. 107000, Chapter 1. The Birth of Aliens. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1.5, There are ancient sayings, please accept. The whole book is divided into two major sections, the Earth section and the Star River section, with small sections within the major sections. The most high-end themes often only require the simplest way of expression. Volume 1. Earth Chapter. Urban and Ancient Gate Chapter. Legend has it that during the ancient times of the Great Flood and Wilderness, there was a phoenix clan named Wu Taibua, who was born in the east of Lishui. It cultivates the beauty of heaven, earth, sun, and moon in the body, and feeds on the essence of grass, wood, insect scales in the abdomen. Through the changes of the stars and constellations, 10,000 chi migrated back, and a total of 3,672 years old experienced nirvana. During his lifetime, he left behind a monumental work on martial arts cultivation, the Tai Bo Dian Lu, consisting of 20 chapters, totaling 51,840 words. According to the book, Mei, Ling, Yin, Fu, and Tian Dai are the 5 levels of cultivation. Elementary, middle, high, and peak climbing are 4 levels of each grade. Commonly known as Wu Mei period, Wu Ling period, Wu Yin period, Wu Fu period, Tian Dai period. Unfortunately, the Tai Bo Dian Lu has been passed down for more than 800 years and has been lost in people's sight. As for where did he go from? There are countless legendary stories that have been passed down in the world. The most beloved among them is Feng Zhi, the founder of the Poor Mountain Gate in the Western Sea during the spring and autumn period of the Seven Kingdoms period. It is said that Feng Zhi was born on Qiongxian Island in the South China Sea, and at the age of 12, he made his own raft to cross Shenzhou to the north. After 7 or 8 years of trekking through mountains and rivers, we arrived on foot at the 800-mile territory of Xinghe Yuan. Later, due to fate, he obtained the book Tai Bo Dian Lu, and fled into the deep mountains, cutting off the world. From then on, regardless of the year, day, and month, I practiced. One day, he will cultivate into a heavenly generation, and when he comes out of the mountains, he will be old and white-haired. But he doesn't care, he just heads north all the way. Sometimes soaring in the air, sometimes walking slowly. One day, I suddenly met a family and hurried over to inquire. What year is it now? The person replied, it is now the Hongwu period of the Tianhan dynasty. How many years have passed since the spring and autumn period of the Seven Kingdoms? You old fool, don't you really know? It's been 500 or 600 years. Feng Zhi looked up and sighed, sigh. My mother has passed away for many years. So he continued northward and reached the impoverished mountains of the West Sea. Created the first gate in the West Sea. The Poor Mountain Gate. I don't know how many years have passed, but Feng Zhi has reached the limit of his cultivation as recorded in the scriptures, and there is no more to satisfy him. So, in a fit of anger, he launched the Poor Gate and collected all the surviving biographies and copies in the world, burning them all together. Then, alone, he ascended to another world. Speaking of which, although there are no surviving copies of the Tai Bo Dian Lu, its content and principles have been passed down by many ancient sects to this day. Unfortunately, its cultivation results ultimately differ from those recorded in the original scriptures. However, there are few records in the book about how the cultivation of martial arts has developed over thousands of years since the fall of Taibua. You only followed after 1,000 years. As for how the story begins, it begins in eastern China, in the spring of the 35th year of the Republic Xishan Hashan, heading gate. Green bricks and tiles, carved with motes, Ma-ing, listed, Wudong rain, green willow flowers. The momentum of the faction is grand and full of vitality. At the southwest corner of the heading gate, there is a room called Xinghe Yuan Pavilion. Although he is called Ting, he is different from ordinary Guanting and Jingting. Lu Ting and Xia Ting are different. It has doors and households, windows and windows. Why, are you? Look at its length, 30 feet from north to south and 20 steps from east to west, more than 2 zhang tall. The top of the scroll hangs 4 times. Suddenly, a burst of baby crying broke out in the room, echoing through the clouds, startling the egrets on the sandbar and scaring away the foxes and wolves in the valley. Not long after, a strange black hollow appeared on the roof of the house. This virtual cave is the size of a water tank, with faint stars scattered around. The next moment, the stars inside the cave suddenly burst into a beam of light, breaking through the roof and reaching directly onto the newborn baby. But the robust young man holding the baby did not react before he was washed away by this light, and the baby in his hand was also thrown into the air. The other people in the room were no exception, all of whom were shaken open by the aura emanating from the light and fell to the ground. Even the beautiful woman who gave birth to this baby fainted. At this critical moment, the scattered barefoot fairy sitting far away suddenly moved. I saw him, like a sharp sword unsheathed, rush to the bottom where the baby fell and extend a hand to catch it. Child. The robust young man regained his senses and quickly got up to walk in front of the emitting barefoot fairy. Fortunately, the baby was unharmed and fell asleep breathing soundly. The other group also got up from the ground and gathered around to come forward. The robust young man seemed to have thought of something again, so he looked up and watched. Except for a large hole on the roof, all you can see is blue sky and white clouds, with nothing else. Master Rongcheng, what happened just now? What broke the house and entered my son's body? The rest is missing, just like a beam of light. De Zhanshe returned the baby in his hand to the young man and slowly spoke, "Don't worry about your family for now, let me take a look before we talk." Immediately ordered the young girl standing far away to open the exquisite purple brocade bag she carried with her, take out 7 incense lamps and 7 candle holders each, 8 pieces of hanyu, hutai, and zhenna, for silver talismans and 2 gold talismans, a short sword, a single copper bowl. Go and move those tables, chairs, and stools away, set up a formation, and I will start my journey and communicate with the heavens. It's a good deal for de Zhanshe to leave and give orders. The girl heard this and quickly went to do it. Without waiting to set up the formation, de Zhanshe walked to the middle of the scene and closed her eyes and sat up in a cross-legged position. Not long after, the formation had been set up, and de Zhanshe was muttering something. The candles that had not been lit before were all lit up in one go, the incense lamps are also on. Then, the 8 objects slowly rose from the 8 directions of Qian, Kuan, Zhen, Sun, Li, Kan, Zhen, and Dui, floating in mid-air. Everyone was amazed when they saw it. One of the more knowledgeable middle-aged people exclaimed in surprise, "This is the lost 7-star 8-pole formation that has been around for thousands of years." What? 7-star 8-pole array? Everyone stared wide-eyed, looking at the barefoot fairy in the field with a shocked expression. Has Master Rongcheng obtained the true biography of martial uncle? Looking at the altar again, 4 silver talismans slowly floated up from the ground and rotated around the altar. At this moment, Master de Zhanshe suddenly opened his eyes, twisted his 2 fingers in his left hand, and wielded his short sword in his right hand. Just move forward, and the remaining 2 golden talismans fly into the air. Go! With a loud shout, 2 golden talismans suddenly ignited 2 raging blue flames. What's even more remarkable is that the ash from the 2 golden talismans burned out miraculously through itself into the bowl without falling to the ground at all. Xiao Piao Miao, go pour the July water from my pot into a bowl, and take a drop of baby's blood and put it together. After completing everything, Master Dezhan stood up and instructed the girl. Immediately, as soon as he stepped out of the altar, those 8 objects fell from the air to the ground, and the candles and incense lamps all went out. Everyone sighed again when they saw the situation. The robust young man respectfully approached the great chamberlain and helped him to sit down to the side. Rong Cheng, Master Zhan, wait and see, my son, how can we handle it properly? The Zhanshi stroked his beard and said, don't worry, you can follow me to the bowl and take a look later. Before long, the girl had poured the bowl into Qianshui, mixed it with the baby's blood, and then brought it to the table. Grandpa, it's all done. The robust young man, together with the Grand Chamberlain, came to the table and looked down, only to see 8 golden characters floating in the bowl. The fixed number is difficult to break, and the principles of heaven are not declared. What does this mean? The young man was puzzled. The Zhanshi extended a finger and dipped it into the bowl, flicking it a few times, and then those words disappeared. Then, he twisted his beard and said, your family doesn't need to worry too much. The word gold is auspicious and black is ominous. The boy is safe and sound. However, you must remember that this son is different from other families. It is common to say that he cannot stand tall at the age of 2 and cannot speak at the age of 3. Only the most important thing is that you must not forget it. Even before he is 20 years old, he must not practice martial arts, otherwise all the 5 internal organs will be burned and all thoughts will be shattered. The robust young man was greatly surprised and said, there is such a strange thing. After all, I will never have him practice martial arts again. The Zhanshi plucked his beard and laughed again, it's neither right nor wrong. He only needs to be at least 20 years old, and how he practices in the future is irrelevant. Then he instructed the girl, Xiao Piaomiao, pick up something and return to the secluded city mountain. The robust young man saw that the great chamberlain was about to leave, and quickly spoke up to persuade him to stay. Great Chamberlain, please stay. I have prepared a thin banquet for you, please use it before leaving. At this moment, the great chamberlain had already walked outside the door without any intention of turning back, leaving only a lengthy response for the young man. Your family treats each other with sincerity, and I have it in my heart. In the future, if the child has any unresolved difficulties, he will come to Yuqing Mountain to find me. The girl packed her belongings and caught up with the Grand Chamberlain with her bag. Then the 2 of them sat on a wooden brown golden-edged bird and pulled the handle of the gate. The big bird immediately flapped its 2 large wings, buzzing towards the northwest. Chapter 2. Wind Cold Beyond the Great Wall Valley, 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The winding green peaks, W, of the river flows endlessly. Since the founding of Pangu, there has been a unique and charming scenery, northwest Saiwai Valley. In the autumn of the 35th year of the Republic of China at that time in the valley, 2 black shadows are weaving through it at an extremely fast speed. They jump left and right, like stubborn monkeys and rabbits. Suddenly, a pine cone fell from somewhere unknown. Just halfway down, he was caught by Lien Lingfeng and crushed. Tightly speaking, he said, after passing through Yijue Mountain, they will be under the jurisdiction of Juyinghao. We must intercept them before this. Angry night cold fell on a withered tree, and upon hearing Lien Lingfeng's words, he sneered, little gathering hall, why bother mentioning it? Suddenly, with a kick from both feet, the dead wood under my feet suddenly split into 4 or 5 cracks, and debris flew horizontally. And his whole being is like an arrow full of strings. With just a whoosh, the figure disappeared. Lien Lingfeng is not an ordinary person. Although there were many trees in the mountains, they also became a place for him to show his skills. With just a moment's effort, he caught up with angry night cold. Therefore, the 2 of them concurrent and headed south. Just talk about the 4 people being chased. It is precisely the special disciples of the heading gate in Shijuan. Nangong Xinghe, Baibu Tong, Yin Shigui, and Shuling. Among them, Nangong, Baibu, and Shi were 3 of the 8 heroes in the butterfly department of Heatingmen. And Shuling is the wife of Nangong Song. Not far from Yijue Mountain, we arrived at the Juying Hall. Shirshi and I are here to hold back the people of the heavenly sect. Brother Nangong, go and seek help from the Hall Master Lei Dongming with Shuer. He is a close friend of our sect and will definitely come to our rescue. Bai Butong turned his head to look at the jungle behind him, his expression solemn. How can you stop the people of the heavenly sect based on the strength of you and Shirshi? If you want to leave, let's go together. Don't waste your life. Nangong Singing disagrees. If Bai Butong and Yin Shixian could withstand the wind of Lian Lin and the cold of angry night, how could they risk their lives to escape? 4 people have long worked together to repel the enemy. Yijue Mountain has a total length of 19 miles and is littered with trees. Once inside, it will be difficult for the people of the heavenly sect to track your specific whereabouts. But if we come together, we will inevitably give them a chance to catch them all in one go. You are the candidate for the position of David personally proposed by the sect, there is no room for error. Bai Butong saw that the southern palace was not listening to the singing, so Chenming had a vested interest in it. In the face of danger, I will give up my righteousness. How can I be such a David steward? Let's not do it. Bai Butong was almost furious. You can let go of David's obsession, but if we all die, all the intelligence we've put in a lot of effort to gather will be turned into nothing, nothing will exist. Do you know that Yunding Tianzong kills people without leaving any bones? Let me teach you this. Nangong sang angrily and said, what's the use of your teachings? It's because they are ferocious that they are walking together. The 4 of them can't retreat completely with their combined strength. Isn't parting equal to dying? Don't say that your life as a 100-step child is worthless, I am waiting for an immensely prestigious one. Yin Shixian saw that the 2 were arguing endlessly, so he spoke softly. Brother Nangong, I know you are righteous and domineering, but at this critical moment, you should prioritize the overall situation. Quang Shuer is also here. You can't bear to see her face danger with your own eyes, can you? As soon as this sentence is spoken, it goes straight to Nangong to sing the heart of the left rib. He only looked slightly at Shuling and then blinked his eyes, unable to say a word for a moment. 1,000 sails pass by the side of a sunken boat, and 10,000 trees bloom before a diseased tree. Brother Nangong, I'm not afraid. No matter where or when, I'll be with you. Bai Butong Chi Sha said, stop. Stop. Now we should only work hard to advance and retreat together, not to mention the excess, move forward at full speed. Suddenly, the 4 of them turned into remnants and sped rapidly through the mountains. Due to the use of the true spirit within the body, countless flowers and plants were damaged wherever they passed. Yijue Mountain is divided into 2 peaks, north and south. The north peak is 270 zhang, and the south peak is 250 zhang. It is precisely because of one mountain and 2 peaks that it is named Yijue Mountain. The saying goes, 19 miles of Yiju divides the frontier, and from then on, Yong and Liang each became their own homes. Although it is not the actual boundary of the carved mark, overall, this mountain is also considered a heavenly barrier between the north and south chambers. In addition, Jiangtang has dared to establish its doors in the northern and southern households, and the conflict between military families has been going on for over 400 years. Such a long-lasting prosperity, I believe there must be something special about him. As a good mountain, there must be flowing water and fish jumping happily. A thin golden leaf fluttered gracefully, falling from the air and covering a red fox. Suddenly, the red fox was surprised and ran away, hiding in a thicket of flowers and plants. Originally, several figures suddenly appeared in the quiet valley. Bai Butong was holding onto a tree trunk with one hand, hanging motionless in the air. Angry and cold at night, why be sneaky? Just come out and fight. It turned out that before this, a black shadow had already crossed the 100-step child from one side of the forest. You are truly a proud disciple of the heading sect. Let me guess, you are the only son under the knee of the 100 Steps classic mountain, and indeed have some of his grace. Listening to their words but not seeing their people, Bai Butong sneered. I see a worm in your head. I grew up alone when I was 100 steps old, where did I hear the village's fallacy? In an instant, a gloomy voice drifted from the mountains and forests, whether it's 100 steps through the mountains or the opening of the southern palace, if you have chosen a good feng shui site, then it should be a place for burial. Nangong Song, Yin Shixian, and Xue Ling escaped from different trees and came together. They each had a stern expression and clenched their fists. In an instant, the maple forest swayed and the fallen leaves danced. Suddenly, two black-robed men descended from nowhere and appeared in front of the four with a shout. Yunding Heavenly Sect dislikes indiscriminate killing of innocent people, but you have seen things you shouldn't have seen. So, today I am on behalf of heaven, wiping you out of this world. Angry Night with cold eyes like eagles and falcons, gradually pressing towards the three people underground. Seeing this, Bai Butong swung his body and jumped off the tree, blocking the three of them and posing for battle. Yin Shixian also walked forward without fear, posing side by side with Bai Butong. Yunding Tianzong steals the sky and changes the sun, secretly instigating war. If I'm not wrong, the Iron War army of Batumstan in the northwest is under your control. Right. This was supposed to be something that Yunding Tianzong couldn't bear to see, but now Yin Shixian is still speaking up in front of the two of them, which is like adding fuel to the fire. You know too much. Angry Night Cold suddenly burst out of place, reaching directly to the storefronts of Bai Butong and Yin Shixian. Bang! 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 The three of them immediately engaged in a big battle, with the sound of physical collisions echoing in the air. On the other hand, Lian Linfeng also fought alongside Nangong Singing and Shuling. The sound was constant, the trees were flying horizontally, the murky dust was rolling, and the insects and beasts were startled to flee. Luokuan Palm. The palm generates the 8 extremes and falls from the sky. Pan's horizontal strike. The power of Wan Jun breaks mountains and seas. Yen Yu slash. With an electric flame, 1,000 blades were cut. Thunder Golden Shield. Powered up the mountain, indestructible. It's really necessary to do everything, to use every move. The 6 of them fought in the twilight, and the dark wind and clouds surged in the sky. The shapes and objects formed by the condensation of true spirits collide with each other, each releasing pressure. Suddenly, the valley and forests were in chaos. The southern palace sings and the 100-step child, deceiving the few with the crowd, angry nights and cold nights, practicing the cold wind and bullying the weak. 10 battles are not over, but 20 battles have begun to become clear. I saw Nangong singing on the side of Bai Butong, but ultimately lost in strength and fell behind. Xue Ling was the most unbearable. She first took a palm from Lian Lingfeng, then threw it away 100 meters away and spat out a mouthful of blood. Xue. Chapter 3. Wind Cold Beyond the Great Wall Valley, 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Nangong sang a scream of surprise. Just as he was about to lose his consciousness, Lian Lingfeng suddenly circled behind him and swept out a kick. Nangong couldn't look back and was hit hard by the practicing wind, directly hitting a small mound several hundred meters away. Wow! Suddenly, the small mounds and flowers scattered, and mud and dust splashed the cage. Not only that, but also Lian Lingfeng used his true spirit to condense one after another. Heavenly Needle Triple. At that moment, a large beam of light appeared in the air and fiercely smashed towards Nangong Singing. Bang! Nangong's song was too scared to dodge and was hit head-on by the beam of light, taking her whole person several meters underground. Bang! Bang! Following that, the second and third pillars continued to sing towards the southern palace. The original mound has turned into a large deep pit with a circumference of 20.30 meters. Bai Butong's side was also unbearable. It had been half an hour since the first battle, and although Angry Night Cold had suffered 4 or 5 moves from the two of them, he was unharmed. On the other hand, Bai Butong and Yin Shixian had broken clothes and several bruises on their bodies, all with bloodstains. Although true spirit condensation has infinite power, it is extremely exhausting. If the supply stored in the body is insufficient, it can cause injuries to muscles and bones, and in severe cases, both jade and stone will be burned. Therefore, physical combat is undoubtedly the hard way of combat, while true spirit condensation is accompanied by the assistant. The final battle of the three is yet to be decided, with Bai Butong and Yin Shixian fighting hand in hand, Angry Night Cold dismantled one by one. So they fought dozens of rounds again. Bang! Suddenly, Yin Shixian was careless and was punched hard by Angry Night Cold, hitting the center of his eyebrows. The whole person suddenly shot out and collided with a large stone. The big stone also split in half, and Yin Shigui vomited blood from his mouth, half lying in the stone. Luokuan palm. Taking advantage of this gap, Bai Butong quickly raised his right hand and condensed a large palm with his true spirit. I saw this big palm, measuring 60 to 70 meters in length and width, whistling from the air as it covered the body of Angry Night Cold. Thunder Golden Shield. In a moment of urgency, Angry Night Cold raised his hands and turned into a golden shield, protecting him above his head. Boom, two objects collided and made a loud noise. Bai Butong appears to be making a move, but in reality, it's for a surprise attack. He used this move only to divert the power of Angry Night Cold to resist, and it had already penetrated into the air within 3 feet of Angry Night Cold with a fierce punch, bang. The fist was fierce, and in a fit of anger and pain, it flew hundreds of meters away and smashed many rocks and trees. However, its body was as strong as iron and did not suffer much damage. It slid on the ground with only hands and feet, then came to a steady stop. The 100-step child gasped for breath and shouted fearlessly. Come again. Angry Night Cold opened his eyes wide and said with jealousy, good fist. You should exchange it for the price. Then he shot out fiercely and in the blink of an eye, he arrived in front of Bai Butong, returning this punch. Bai Butong fully focused and dodged the punch of Angry Night Cold. But it can be said that although Guanyin with 1,000 hands has lost 1 arm, she still has 100 limbs. Angry Night Cold is not the kind of monkey teaser. Just as Bai Butong was trying to avoid his punch, he suddenly kicked and hit Bai Butong's chest. Bang! Bai Butong was hit hard by this and collided with the mountain, which suddenly exploded into a section. The stones were shattered like rain, falling down and burying half of the body of Bai Butong. Bai Butong remained motionless no longer for a long time, a cool breeze blew by, and the wild surge gradually turned into tranquility. I saw that the black clouds in the sky had receded a lot, and when I looked up, I could see a warm breeze. Shuling slowly climbed up from the ground, looked around, and suddenly saw a large pit not far away, so she quickly ran to check. As expected. When looking down, Nangong Sang curled up, half buried in the soil. Brother Nangong! Shuling exclaimed in shock, about to get up and jump down the pit to save Nangong while singing, when suddenly the voice of Lian Lingfeng came from behind, a couple of life and death, with lingering love, I can't bear to tear you apart. Let's go down together. Upon hearing this, Lian Lingfeng looked back and found a sharp stone spear from somewhere. With a sizzle, he inserted it into Shuling's chest and pierced through her back. Snowbell's eyes were stunned, holding a stone spear in one hand and falling into the pit. Find another big stone to fill you in. Lian Lingfeng explored left and right before turning around and leaving. After Shuling fell into the pit, she suppressed the pain from her chest and resolutely climbed up to Nangong Sing's side, then placed one hand on his face and stroked it back and forth. I am fortunate to be with you and not have come to this life in vain. Shuling choked a few times, then spat out a mouthful of blood, closed her eyes, and there was no more sound. Nangong's singing had already heard what Shuling was saying, so she suddenly opened her eyes and looked deeply at Shuling. That expression was extremely sorrowful, wanting tears without beads. Blood's a bright red patch. Soaked through the clothes and soaked the hands, schwer. Nangong sang and let out a soft cry. However, only the desolation that has been blown away has received no response, only lamenting that life is short and the days and nights are not enough. Looking at the snow bell lying quietly on the ground, Nangong sang with heart-wrenching pain, burning inside. Slowly, his eyes began to turn red as he crawled out of the soil, his body involuntarily emitting a faint red aura. Then, the sand and stones soared into the air, and the earth began to tremble. At this moment, Lien Linfeng happened to have found a large stone, and upon seeing the scene, he quickly lowered the raised stone. Big. Desolate. Heavy. Barbaric. Every word spoken in her mouth causes immense pain to her body, but Nangong Sing's eyes have turned red and she no longer disregards her own safety by using her ancestral forbidden technique. Bang! As the big stone was about to fill the deep pit, suddenly a red breath rose up from the sky, directly piercing through the big stone and breaking it apart. Nangong Sang was surrounded by a red breath, and he gently picked up the snow bell and jumped out of the pit. Seeing Nangong singing, Lien Linfeng's hands began to tremble, and he retreated back in succession. De Huang Zhong Man. This is the ancestral forbidden technique of the Nangong clan. Lien Linfeng has already felt fear from the bottom of his heart. Today I want you to be shattered to pieces. Nangong sang fiercely and shot out from the spot, with a speed as fast as lightning. Fear made Lien Linfeng unable to move at all, and he could only watch as Nangong sang his big fist and hit him. Bang! With a mouthful of blood and a few teeth splattering out, Lien Linfeng's body flew backwards and his head hummed. However, Nangong Song did not let go of it. He rushed forward one after another, crossed the Lien Linfeng, and then lay down to support the ground with his backhand, kicking his legs up. Bang! The newly arrived Lien Linfeng was once again thrown into the sky. Nangong Song quickly turned around and made a sudden leap. Jumped to a higher altitude above Lien Linfeng, then raised his right arm and forcefully pulled an elbow into Lien Linfeng's abdomen. Bang! Lien Linfeng once again spat out a red object at his mouth, fiercely falling down and colliding head-on with the ground. Boom! A loud bang, smoke and dust rolling, and sand and stones splashing. Luokuan palm. Continuously emerging, another form of object falls from the sky, shooting straight to practice the wind. For a long time, heaven and earth have returned to their original state. Undoubtedly, it has added a few more ruins and a few more ruins. As for the flowers, plants, trees, mountains, rocks, and soil, they have lost their original appearance, absolutely arrogant. Angry Night Cold suddenly kicked out from behind Nangong Sing at an unknown time. Nangong Sing quickly turned back and grabbed the foot of Angry Night Cold, then suddenly jumped up. Throw him hard to the ground. Boom! Another loud noise rang out. Nangong Sang quickly jumped up into the sky, twisting the formula in her mouth and swiping her virtual palms in 7 different directions. Li, Kan, Sun, Zhen, Zhen, Dui, Qian. The ultimate falling Kuan palm. Finally, he gave a shout from above the Kuan position and slapped the ground fiercely. Suddenly, a red palm measuring 100 meters in length and width appeared in the air, spreading downwards. That majesty! Blocking the sky and sun, sending raging winds, shaking mountains and earth, collapsing into neon lights. That scene! Like the 5 sacred mountains advancing, like the surging waves of the 4 seas, indescribable. Amidst the raging fire and urgency, Angry Night Cold exhausted all his remaining strength and deployed the Thunder Golden Shield. But when the palm met the ground, it stirred up thousands of sand and stones. Boom! A few quarters of an hour later, Nangong Sing could no longer withstand the backlash brought by the forbidden technique. Her legs softened and she knelt down on one knee, spitting out a bright red in her mouth. His eyes were bloodshot, one hand propped up on the ground, and the other hand took out a double moon jade pendant from his arms, looking up, "Child, grow up well and become a father. Let's take a step forward." In the end, Nangong Singh was transformed into a stone statue, with no more vitality. Chapter 4. Taking Away Orphans. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After calming down for a while, Lian Lin's windbreaker was shattered and he crawled out of the pit in a disheveled manner. He walked up to the stone statue and quietly looked at it for a while. What a vast wilderness and barbarian place, almost losing his life. If it weren't for each one taking their own course, I would have sworn to make friends with heroes like you to the death. I only hope to be brothers in the next life. After looking left and right, he turned around and went to find Angry Night Cold. But before he could take a few steps, he suddenly heard the voice of Angry Night Cold, "Practice the Lingfeng and burn all their corpses to avoid disaster." A mournful wind blew by, and the practicing wind followed the sound. On the edge of the pit, Angry Night Cold was covered in blood. One of his arms was completely disabled. Your arm. There's nothing to be alarmed about, just one is enough. Angry Night Han's face showed a ferocious expression. "I want them to be shattered into countless pieces." After pondering for a moment, Lian Lingfeng suddenly thought of something. "I heard that there is a country in the Middle East that knows the art of limb renewal. As long as you ask for it with heavy etiquette, it will definitely regenerate your arms." "What, there's such a way? Why didn't you say it earlier?" Angry Night Han was pleasantly surprised, but then he looked around and became eager. "Hurry up, destroy their corpse capital before anyone comes." Lian Lingfeng's expression was somewhat uncertain. "The two people who fought with you at first still had one breath left. I'll go take care of them," he said. "As for this stone statue and that female body, I'll keep it, after all. Practice Lingfeng. Kindness can never accomplish great things. Your hands are already covered in blood." Angry Night Han roared in anger and dragged his disabled arm towards the stone statue. Just as he was about to raise his hand to destroy the stone statue, suddenly dark clouds gathered in the sky and a dark wind blew up. Immediately afterwards, a deep voice spread throughout the entire valley, "Who intruded into the Jueying Hall? Leave quickly." Pop, as the words fell, a thunderbolt struck from the clouds, accurately striking between the stone statue and Angry Night Cold. Boom! The electric flame suddenly exploded on the ground, igniting a raging fire. The aftershocks of the thunderbolt caused Angry Night Cold to recoil dozens of steps and fall to the ground. But the stone statue remained unscathed. "It's Lei Dongming!" Lian Lingfeng suddenly exclaimed in surprise. Angry Night Han stumbled to his feet, his anger raging as he cursed at the sky. "Originally belonging to the Great Wall Valley, when did it become your gathering place for heroes? If you meddle in your own business, you will establish an eternal enmity with the heavenly sect. Go away. Not to mention it's okay." His words made the sky even more turbulent with black clouds and wind and rain. "Who intruded into the Jueying Hall? Leave quickly." Pop, another thicker thunder swept down and struck in front of the two of them. The aftershock shook both of them flying at the same time, and the earth fire ignited even more vigorously. Angry Night Han still wanted to shout, but Lian Lingfeng grabbed him and said, "Lei Dongming's intention has become apparent. He only wants to save these people and dare not harm us. Let's retreat for now and plan again." Speaking of forcefully dragging the heavily injured Angry Night Cold onto his body, he headed towards the deep valley. Not long after, the dark clouds in the sky dissipated, and suddenly two young men came from one end of the mountain. They took the Dying by Butong Nin Shixian, as well as the stone statue sung by Nangong, and the body of Xueling, down the mountain together. Return to Jueying Hall. Big deal. Big deal. A young disciple with grey clothes and hair tied ran all the way towards the central hall of the heading gate. He passed through the vermilion sand gate with 2 turns, climbed 100 steps long ladder, ran along a kilometer-long stone path, and turned around the corridor 3 times. Finally, at the northeast corner of the martial arts stage, 50 steps away, a plaque with the 4 red gold characters, "Martial Inheritance of the Fragrant Orchid," was carved, and a double-footed meal was given. Due to the excessive penetration force, the body was unable to stop, and the disciple's head was faster than his feet. With a bang, he rushed towards the entrance of the main hall. Unfortunately, this gate was once crafted from black stone carefully selected by Prince Dali of the Taiming dynasty and gifted as a gift to the heading gate. It has been 300 to 400 years since then. Unfortunately, it caused such a child to break a corner. When everyone saw it, they all secretly sighed and said, "Oh dear, how can you be so unbearable? That child's head is broken and can be repaired. How can you repair it if you break it now?" The disciple was dizzy and dizzy. After sitting for a while, he shook his heavy head and stood up, arched his hand and said, "Report to the Grand Master, Nangong singing from the 8 heroes of the butterfly department. He was chased by the people of the Cloud Ding heavenly sect in the Great Wall Valley and has died." As soon as these words were spoken, they were like a bolt from the blue. Led by Elder Nangong Kai, he jumped up from his seat and strode outside the hall. When he mentioned this young disciple, he shouted loudly, "Dare you say it again?" The disciple trembled and said, "Nan Nan. Nangong de Gu." He used his ancestral forbidden technique of great wilderness and heavy barbarians and became a stone statue in the northern valley. What? We used the great wilderness heavy barbarians. It has become a stone statue. Everyone in the hall was shocked. Cloud Ding Tian Zong. Nangong threw his disciple into the main hall and roared, slapping him hard on the ground. However, the palm strength was insufficient and only a few small cracks opened on the ground. Suddenly, 100-meter-wide palm appeared in the sky, falling from the sky. Just smashed the martial arts stage into pieces. Boom! The entire hall trembled, and some neighboring houses collapsed. Yen Rong, who sat the most in the main hall, crushed the South China Sea crystal ball in his hand. When it comes to this South China Sea crystal ball, which is transparent throughout and harder than gold and stone, it has now become a powder. However, although Yen Rong was angry, he remained expressionless and only spoke lightly to the disciple, "Sit down and speak slowly." "Tonger, with tea." "Yes, Grand Master." The woman standing by quickly agreed, stepped forward to help her disciple sit down, and then poured him a bowl of hot tea. Inside the main hall, it is divided into left and right sides. 5 positions in the east, each seated by 5 elders, 4 positions in the west were assigned to the 4 David attendants. And there are also many spare spaces available for temporary use in preparation for guests. The disciple drank tea and was about to start a big conversation when suddenly a graceful and exquisite woman in a thin purple dress walked into the door, accompanied by 2 girls. I still need to ask him, but it turns out that Lei Dongming, the old turtle, shrank his head and neck, and even died when he arrived at his doorstep. Now, I will take someone to demolish his Juying Hall. Everyone turned their heads and saw that the newcomer was actually the head of the 5 elders of the sect, the head of the butterfly department. Butterfly Flower-ing. Butterfly Lord is feeling a little uneasy. I don't think this matter may be as hasty as you have heard. Lei Dongming is a righteous person and will never refuse to save him. There is a reason for the incident. Please listen to the boy's words and don't harm the harmony between the 2 families. Elder Bin stood up with a smile and said. Butterfly Flower blinked her eyes and sneered, "Bing Xiao, are you considering your own bird to be dead? The one who dies is the disciple that Butterfly Flower should rely on the most. Calm down." "How can I be calmed down? The person died at his doorstep, but he hesitated to take action. This was not intentional, but rather a deliberate act. Yen Rong saw that butterfly flower should be angry on the spot, so she spoke softly. Hua Ying, the death of Nangong Sing, was a great misfortune for the sect. He was not only the nephew who Nangong brother helped grow up with his own hands, but also a good disciple of Yen Rong. A while ago, I discussed with all of you to promote him as the candidate for David's leadership. However, before this burden fell on him, he left us first, which caused tears to fall. It's just the weight of the deceased, while the living should be returned. The most important thing now is to bring back those who have survived. Butterfly flower should turn around and put on a skirt, leading the two girls out of the hall, leaving only a cold advice to spread back and forth in the hall. Yenrong, stay away from the deep courtyard all day long. The heading gate will eventually die in your hands. You are afraid of the Cloud Ding heavenly sect, but I am not afraid. Everyone looked up at the figure of butterflying gradually fading away, then looked up at Yen Rong sitting on the seat, and finally all lowered their heads to sigh. Yen Rong shook her head and sighed helplessly. Hua Ying, I don't know what you're thinking in your heart, sigh. It's just that the Yunding heavenly sect's divine dragon is visible from head to toe, with its power spreading throughout the world. If anyone can find their stronghold, how can they suffer today? With a positive expression on his face, Yen Rong said to his disciple, Kid, continue to tell me what you know. The disciple lowered his head and said, besides brother Nangong, sister Shuer also. Although the disciple did not speak thoroughly, everyone recognized the meaning in his words, so they all lowered their heads and brushed their tears. Yen Rong lost his usual dignity and said softly, besides, how are Bai Butong and Yin Shixian doing? The disciple explained what he knew one by one to the people in the main hall. The two elder brothers have saved their lives. Now at the Juying Hall, they are only weak and cannot eat meat or rice. They only drink soup and medicine. After listening to him finish speaking, Yen Rong suddenly stood up and announced. I hereby order that from now on, all mourning ceremonies will be held in white cloth, with a 7-day fasting period and a ban on martial arts. Receive the southern palace's singing stone statue, respect the ancestors' hall, and let the spirit enter the mourning hall. Receive the body of Shuling, bury it in 100 gardens, and let the spirit enter the mourning hall. Sitting down, everyone shouted in unison, yes. After leaving the hall, Yen Rong smiled at Bin and said, Elder Bin, I'll trouble you with the handover of the Juying Hall. Bin smiled and sighed, without hesitation, this matter of the sect falls within my duties. Time flies, and in the blink of an eye, more than 3 months have passed. Suddenly, a young disciple rushed into the main hall of the heading gate and shouted. Hurry up! Hurry up! Bai Butong ran away with the orphans singing in Nangong. A young man on the west seat in the main hall suddenly jumped up in shock and said, Did he run away? When did he run away? Where did he run to? Does the Lord know if he knows? Everyone looked at him and saw that he was one of the 4 leaders of the sect, the elder brother of Bai Butong. Bai Bu Rui. The disciple sat down on the ground and said, I don't know, the Lord doesn't know, everyone doesn't know. Chapter 5. Disaster Arrival, Preface. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The mountains and rocks stand tall and beautiful, the colorful clouds sway and shine, the floating bridge and carved pavilions, and the jade pavilion and Cheong Tower, the prosperity of the city's dust is like a 9-day feast. In the state of Zagrisa, Berg City, and the Dragon's Inn. A single mansion here is better than the royal court in the world. In one of its courtyards. Spring is abundant, surrounded by green trees, yao grass is a rare plant, and the fragrance of orchids is fragrant. On the side of the western garden forest, there are howling phoenixes, in the midst of flowers and plants, insect scales fight against each other. In the pond, lotus flowers meet, under the wall, Yuan, the bamboo plants have the same roots. At one end of this courtyard, there is a pool called Huansha Pool. There is a pavilion in the pool called Fangfei Pavilion. There is a young man sitting on the pavilion, looking at his appearance. He has a clear and jade-like posture, and his energy flies like a god, with the elegance of a woman, yet without losing the strength of a man. Looking at his attire again, he was dressed in a brocade and satin robe, alternating blue and green, which was indeed very different from ordinary people. He is the young lord of this mansion, Yi Dang, Yi Xiaozhu. At this moment, 3 other people stood outside the pavilion. Led by a middle-aged man, dressed in a brown golden silk robe with a jade belt around his waist, below are a pair of mixed blue silk pants legs and grey-soled black leather boots, embroidered with 1 unicorn flat beast each. The middle-aged man held a half-meter-long copper joint in his hand, painted with a kunpeng pattern. 2 attendants were beside him, wearing grey clothes and hair tied, holding a long sword in his hand, with a poised and ready-to-go appearance. Yi Xiaozhu, I am currently visiting your esteemed sect, so I have 2 things to ask for. First of all, did the young master send envoys to that blue charm star? Qin Hu, the middle-aged leader, spoke up. Yi Dang ignored his middle-aged words and just played with cups and fans, occasionally falling a few petals on his shoulder. It said that the young master is very approachable. It seems that the rumors are false, isn't it? Seeing Yi Dang not answering, Qin Hu said again. Yi Dang turned his head and suddenly pointed to a few fallen petals on his shoulder. The rumor is true. If you don't believe it, look at these flowers and petals. They are all sent to me, and I won't rush them. He. Qin Hu smiled and said, how can these flowers and petals compare to people? Orphan is incomparable to humans, but unfortunately, some people cannot compare to this Orphan. You. Qin Hu became angry and said, eating. I only see that you are the Lingbao of Longhun Feng Shui. How could you speak so hurtful? I only mentioned some people, but I didn't mention your Qin family. Where did you come from to speak up and hurt others? Qin Hu snorted coldly, stop it. Just treat me as passionate. Yi Dinka didn't care what Qin Hu thought, he continued to shake the fan in his hand and said calmly, you just say what this second item is. Qin Hu straightened his expression and said, you should know that the struggle between the priests and the Fumen is never just about language and strategy, everyone knows that only resources are the ultimate victory. So, I hope you can see the situation clearly and not blindly stand in the wrong team. Yi Dang smiled lightly and said, Qin family, what is blindness? What is the situation? Nowadays, Fumanda covers all directions and is visible to the eye. Those who rely on it are all called role models, which are unfavorable in terms of form and momentum. Looking at the high priest again, his white hair was flowing slowly. Although he was entrusted by the former king and did not lose the title of hero, he was ultimately the older generation. In terms of vitality, he was never as strong as the younger generation. In my opinion, if 2 families live in harmony and cooperate with each other, the stars will return. If they come together with swords and weapons, it will cause harm to all living beings. The Qin family, disregarding the peace of the world, wants me to be at the mercy of one side and give someone a handle. Isn't this pushing me towards water and fire, and placing me in injustice? I think the Qin family should go back and not bring up this topic again. If not, they will sit down in my mansion and have the assistant chef cook some small dishes. We will drink a few cups of him and chat about some old stories. Isn't it enjoyable? What does the Qin family think? Qin Hu laughed heartily and said, according to you, I am the culprit for disrupting the overall situation. Besides, the models you mentioned are just a group of hypocritical big lies. No one knows, these people are full of nonsense and fame, only knowing how to help others and promote the sanctification of education, but never considering the real danger. Yi Dang said calmly, if you don't argue about who is true and who is false, you will surely understand. I don't like struggle. There are so many pleasures here that I can't finish them all. You are like that, admiring flowers and trees, wading in the water and boating, playing with stones and jade, and traveling in the wind and clouds, all of these are my lifelong pleasures and daily thoughts. Where can I have the leisure to think of anything else? Qin, who didn't know what it was to play in the water and board a boat, and Yun Yao's song was written about it. He only knew that Yi Deng was a rare piece of good material, because he said passionately, "Yi Deng, the priest has great confidence in your talent. If you are willing to dedicate yourself to serving the Lord and receive his guidance and promotion, not only can you make significant progress in cultivation, but your status will also rise with the tide. In addition, I will also give you all the resources of that planet. How about that?" Although Yi Deng's heart was attached to the blue enchanting star, he did not change his original persistence for it. He suddenly stood up and walked out of the pavilion, passing by Qin Hu. "That beautiful planet doesn't belong to you, Qin Hu, nor does it belong to me, Yi Deng. It belongs to billions of creatures. How can we push it? Send it to the Qin family." After Yi Deng finished speaking, a servant walked along the pond towards Qin Hu. Qin Hu was completely angry, raised one hand and spread his 5 fingers, wanting to end this case. "Qin Hu, do you want to end this year?" However, before Qin Hu could show any action, Yi Deng's cold anger came from behind. Qin Hu didn't turn back, he gradually lowered his anger and threw his raised hand down. "My mouth hasn't dried yet. Please store this wine for me to drink next time. But remember. That blue planet." After a pause, he turned his head and looked at Yi Deng's back with envy, squeezing out the second half of a sentence from his mouth. "It's not as fun as you think, humph." With a flick of his sleeve, he led 2 attendants out of the door and sat in a golden-topped, trimmed, and colorful sedan chair. I saw the large sedan carriage being led by 2 flat connected beasts, which were more than 2 zhang long and 9 feet high. It looks like a horse, but it has 2 horns on its head. One horn grows on the nose, and the other horn grows in the middle of the forehead. The whole body is blue and white, like the color of a clear sky for thousands of miles. And those 2 attendants sat on both sides of the front chamber of the sedan chair, driving the Pinglian beast together. "Hey!" With a tug of the bridle rope, the 2 flat beasts suddenly moved their 4 legs and slowly disappeared into the official path, leading the large sedan chair New Star River era. 107,000 years. The southern Milky Way in the Ashu Blue Belt. The Weimar Galaxy. A small comet is approaching Earth at a speed of tens of thousands of kilometers per second. When it enters Earth's atmosphere, its speed has decreased to 15 kilometers per second. Dongfang Huaxia, Republic of China, for 55 years. Within the jurisdiction of Tanlong in Binhai City, I have been watching others' fate all my life, but I haven't counted towards where I am today. What a sin. A celestial astrologer stood on the rooftop holding a child, looking up at the meteorite that was about to fall in the sky. Bang! Bang! Chapter 6. Initial Appearance. You are listening at novelfull.audio. According to the latest news report from our station, located in Tanlong, Binhai City, South China, it was hit by an unknown meteorite from outer space at around 2 a.m. last night, triggering the strongest earthquake in nearly a century in China. The earthquake lasted for 15 minutes, causing unprecedented destruction to the entire Tanlong Dam. Even the Tanlong Dam, which once had a century-old construction project, was flooded as a result, leading to downstream areas. Under the ravages of earthquakes and floods, the country mobilized the Supreme Assembly to lead the National Civil Defense Command Center, the National Frontline Disaster Relief Center, the National Security Center, and various rescue agencies in conjunction with relevant departments in southern China to rush to the disaster site on the same day. Clear and resounding voices emanated from the television. At this moment, Situ Jingyue, who was eating at the 109 Li Xiang restaurant, suddenly lifted her body and made such a big move that she knocked down several dishes on the table. There was a clattering noise, which immediately attracted all the guests to look their heads towards this side. At this sight, everyone was stunned. Alice's blue dress, Daphne's straw high heels, blue and white jade lock silver pendant, glass and blue sea exquisite heart bracelet. My face is like a condensed fat, my eyebrows are like a painting, and when I smile, my two dimples bloom. Her left and right ears were adorned with small emeralds, which added a touch of admiration. Seemingly. The spring breeze brushes against the willows, the blue water paddles on the orchid boat. Looking at her again, her lips were like rose petals, her teeth are as pure as pearls, her bright eyes are like autumn water, and black silk floats in the wind. Situ Jingyue's move not only alarmed the customers in the store, but also the supervisor in the back room. Xu Yuyan. He walked out of the door on the side of the checkout counter, dressed in a brown nylon suit from South Slavic. Just waiting to see what happened, when he looked, it was his familiar old customer. Hey Yuer. Why? Is there such a big commotion? Uncle Yuyan slowly walked over and asked softly. I'm really sorry to play the role of uncle. I was in a hurry just now. You see, the floor was covered all over. I'll compensate you for this bowl of money. Situ Jingyue quickly picked up the bag on the stool and rummaged through it. Oh my, how much can these bowls be worth? Why bother with them? What happened? Uncle Yu exerted a big hand to suppress Situ Jingyue's movements. Did Uncle Yen watch TV? The Tanlong earthquake, it's said to have been caused by a meteorite impact. It only caused suffering for the people there. Situ Jingyue pointed to the TV hanging on the wall and smiled bitterly. You have no way to prepare for these natural and man-made disasters, you can only pray for them. Uncle Yuyan sighed and then turned to the customer in the store, saying. Today, I suddenly heard about the misfortune of our country and the restaurant was closed for 2 days. After everyone finished eating, we all went back. We won't charge for this meal, so I'll treat everyone to it. I won't wait for guests later. If you have an appointment, come back next time. Welcome. One of the guests exclaimed loudly, we can't eat this meal for free. Let's all pay for it together with Brother Yen, and then ask him to donate this meal money to the disaster area. Let's all say it's good or not. Okay. Everyone responded in unison. If one side is in difficulty, support from all directions. Quick. Quick. There's still a child inside. Commander, be careful. Send another person over here, otherwise Xiao Yun won't be able to hold on. This way, hurry up. What are you grinding? The rescue soldiers in the disaster area are running non-stop to rescue, every second they are fighting against the Grim Reaper. A few hours later, Situ Jingyue and her secretary Yiqiuyun arrived at the border of Tanlong. However, at this point, this place is already filled with police officers for traffic maintenance and command. The disaster area is dangerous, please evacuate unrelated personnel. Yiqiuyun looked at a large plaque standing not far away and then said to Situ Jingyue. Mr. Jing, let's go back. This place is locked down. Looking at the ruins before her, Situ Jingyue shed tears. I want to go inside and take a look at the disaster situation, after all, I am one of the members of the Red 10 Society's branch committee. Although this is not within my scope of responsibility, I feel that I have an obligation to do something for them. After listening for a moment, Yiqiuyun gently advised. Mr. Jing, I understand your feelings at the moment, but it's too dangerous inside. What can we do if we go inside? Let's go back first. It's not safe here, and there may be aftershocks at any time. Let's leave the affairs in the disaster area to the rescue soldiers. Yiqiuyun is right. In the unknown situation, no one can guarantee absolute safety here. Situ Jingyue pondered for a moment, no matter what, she couldn't have returned empty-handed. I will temporarily stay in Manpu for a few days. I will assist the Red 10th Society there, and as for Gao Ming, I will send someone else to be responsible for fundraising. Yiqiuyun has been following Situ Jingyue for many years, and she knows that Situ Jingyue is a person who is passionate about the suffering of the people, so it is not easy to say anything more. Before leaving, Situ Jingyue bowed deeply to the disaster area and said, May you all receive the favor of the Heavenly Emperor. Good luck to you all, come on. Xinghe Yuan also followed Situ Xinghe and bowed to the disaster area. Then the two of them left the disaster area with a worried expression, but settled in Manpu City, which intersected with Binhai City. Just running back and forth, both of them were exhausted and went to bed early that night. It's strange to say that the name of the owner of the 10-9 Li Xiang restaurant is actually called Shu Tu, and those who don't know think his surname is Shu and his name is Tuesday. Little did he know that when someone asked him, he said, "My guest's surname is Shu Tu, my name is Shu Tu, and Shu Tu is both a surname and a given name." After the hotel was closed, the supervisor, Uncle Yuan, was idle in the office reconciling accounts. Facing him, he suddenly remembered something and hurriedly got up and walked out of the office towards the back door deep in the hall. When he opened the door, a beautiful small rocky mountain came towards him, with streams and springs flowing in the mountain, accompanied by pine trees. Green and verdant with moss, chirping and hearing birds chirping. Turning over the stone mountain, there is a secluded path winding through a four-cornered pavilion. On the back of the pavilion, there is a lake with floating duckweed and abundant green algae on top. Without seeing the roots of the lotus, there should be red lotus roots spitting out sweet fragrance. Although it is such a beautiful scroll, it cannot retain Uncle's high heart in acting. Not to mention that he has been living here for many years and has become accustomed to it, which of the plants, trees, mountains, and stones in his courtyard did not come from his hands. At work, he leads the position of restaurant manager. In private, I became a butler. Entering the back door leads to the front yard. Uncle Yuan walked towards the right, past a row of eaves corridors, sparsely packed with a few wall lamps, and not far away arrived at the east room. This house has 3 entrances. The innermost door should be smaller, and the middle door should be the largest. When it comes to fashion trends, they are incomparable. If we say they are antique, they are also insufficient. It's better to call it elegant and unique, old and simple. At the upper right corner of the middle door, there is a small sign that reads, "Stay here." There is a small bell nailed below, which makes a dang dang sound every time the wind blows, which is extremely pleasant to listen to. Uncle Yu acted up to the door and started knocking. "Sir, it's already 3:30 p.m. You were supposed to go to Gonling Hall today to celebrate the birthday of Zhao Wensong. However, due to the sudden disaster of Tan Long, Zhao Lao called me this morning specifically, saying that your birthday will be postponed for a few days. We are waiting for an invitation." "Oh, that's it. It's just a matter of 1 sentence. Have you prepared all the medicinal herbs you were asked to prepare?" Zhao Lao doesn't like anything else, he only loves these unnamed grass roots and bark. He, I wonder where he found out about these strange things in Shili. In the room, a thick and loud voice could be heard. Uncle Yu smiled and said, "You forgot. He also has an old uncle who is over 80 years old. I think he probably heard it from there. Anyway, just send him all the goods that day. By the way, while we're idle now, let's go to the southern city together and pick some good ones. I think the ingredients in the library are almost used up, so it's easy to choose some fresh things, then I'll go prepare the car and wait for you." More than 10 minutes later, a large black sedan stopped in front of the courtyard gate. However, this gate is not the entrance of the hotel, but the southwest gate of the entire mansion. It is also the only gate in the courtyard. The entire courtyard is surrounded by residential buildings on all 4 sides and a series of shops on all 4 sides, spanning 3 floors. As for the courtyard that Uncle Yuan passed by just now, it is the central open air courtyard. In addition, there are also 4 halls on the east, west, south, and north sides of the courtyard, corresponding to Chaoyang Hall, Harmony Hall, Guangxian Hall, and Lihua Hall. These 4 halls have different constructions and receive different audiences. However, it is worth reminding that the South Hall is a restaurant. That is Guangxian Hall. Uncle Yuan parked his car and waited at the gate. Soon, a middle-aged man in brocade clothes sat up. He has a deep face and is the owner of this 10-9 Lixiang restaurant and the owner of a large mansion, Shudu. P.S. There's a performance, who is it? He didn't make it to the stars, he's tired of living. Chapter 7. Doubts and Memories. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Tanlong, named after its mountains, has been known for its 1,000 towering peaks and soaring into the sky since ancient times. Although this statement may be somewhat exaggerated, overall, it is located on the southern edge of China and is undoubtedly the longest among the mountains. At this moment, halfway up the mountain, there is a helicopter suspended in the air, and a flat foothold where two people stand. A white-haired beard, leaning on a cane, a suit and leather shoes, shining with sharpness. Yen Lao, this disaster is extraordinary. Xian Fei held a photo in his hand and compared it to the crater in the distance below. The old man with white hair and a beard squinted his eyes and said, "A small meteorite, its power can shake the entire Tanlong." This is not only that, but even more strange is that the entire International Observatory has not detected this meteorite. Xian Fei furrowed his brows and said, "Is it possible that this meteorite impact is related to people practicing in ancient sects, or to the Cloud Ding heavenly sect? It's impossible. The strength of the practitioners of the ancient sect and the Yunding heavenly sect has not yet reached this level of destruction. Even if they work together, they cannot achieve it. This is truly a meteorite impact, truly an extraterrestrial object." Yen Lao's tone is firm. As a disciple of the ancient sect, he can guarantee with his personality that this is not a man-made disaster, more precisely, it is not a man-made disaster on Earth. Based on my speculation, it may not be this meteorite that caused this earthquake, but rather another force. Xian Fei believed in his own judgment, and he could never accept this as an ordinary meteorite impact until his death. However, limited by the information and data currently available, he cannot provide a more reasonable answer. Yen Lao turned around and put away his cane, slightly lifting one arm. "Let's go back. A dedicated team has already been dispatched to investigate this matter. We are only providing intelligence assistance, not the direct responsible person. We will come back when there are any new instructions." Xian Fei nodded knowingly and took Yen Lao's arm and jumped into the air. Unexpectedly jumped onto the helicopter and flew away buzzing. "Call out." A gust of fresh wind blew, and shortly after the helicopter flew away, a young man in a white robe with a silver crown on his head and embroidered edges with golden butterflies suddenly appeared where the two were standing. On his waist, there is a light blue ribbon hanging with a silk ribbon and an exquisite brocade pouch tied around it. The young man clenched his fists and stood straight behind him. "Ancient sect practice. Yunding heavenly sect. Humph, for your sake, I slept for 7 years." In an instant, he saw his feet slowly float up, and then his toes also leave the ground, and he was floating in the air. Then, another gust of fresh wind blew, stirring up the delicate strands of hair that had fallen from his crown. "Xiu." The youth disappeared into the Long Air Fuhai City, East China General Military Pavilion Overseas Liaison Office. "Director, this is a letter faxed from South China by Miss Situ. Please take a look." Assistant Teng Wu handed the letter in his hand to the desk of Situ's dormitory and said. Situ Chin picked up the letter and slowly opened it, only to see a black and white photo of the Tanlong disaster area on top, with some text below that reads. "The unfortunate fate of the heavenly descendants lies in Tanlong, deeply saddened. The little girl harbors innocence in her heart, but her strength is insufficient. She requests to borrow hundreds of millions of funds from the board of directors for turnover, and is scheduled to return them within the specified period." In the lower right corner of Uxian's letter, there is another line of small characters personally written. Situ Xinghe Yuan kneels and bows. After reading it, Situ Chin immediately lifted the letter and slapped it on the table, then shouted angrily. "Does she still have my father in her eyes? It's been 10 years. It's been a full 10 years. As the chairman of the board of directors, isn't that what she called her? Forget it, my daughter asked for money from her father, but it became a loan from her mouth. It's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous. In a fit of anger, he pushed the table and suddenly, all the valuable toys on the table were scattered all over the ground, and many of them were even broken. Tingwu had anticipated that Situ's dormitory would become furious after reading the letter, but he still remained calm and asked, "So this money? Do you still need to say it?" Situ's sleep roared. Tingwu immediately turned around and instructed the finance department to quickly hand over the Bank of Gaoming in South China and transfer this huge amount of capital on a certain day. In no time, Tingwu returned to the office and sat on the sofa on one side. Situ's sleep still couldn't dispel his anger. "Tingwu, if you had such a daughter, you would sooner or later be killed by her anger." Tingwu chuckled and said, "You're very sensible. I'm not afraid you're angry. I just took a peek at this facts. What a rare girl she is. She has a heart for the people, and others can't even think of it." Situ Chin sighed and said, I'm not talking about her side. Forget it, when can you allocate a few days? I'll go back to South China. Tingwu went out, leaving only the Situ dormitory in the office. He raised his hands and rubbed the corners of his temples, then tilted his head back and collapsed on the large leather chair, taking a nap with his eyes closed. However, every time he closed his eyes, a painting would come to his mind. It was a sunset with a red glow climbing the horizon, and a group of merchant ships were berthing at a pier in the Apulev Islands, preparing to set sail. At this moment, the dock was already crowded with people, but there were still people flocking one after another. They disregarded the people around them and only pushed forward desperately in order to board the fleet first. Therefore, it also led to dozens of people being trampled on, and the scene was extremely chaotic. However, despite how humbly these people begged and begged, the fleet never put down the bridge deck, and the people on the shore began to shout the name of Situ's dormitory, calling out for help. Some of them knelt down in groups of 3 or 5, some even jumped off the dock and wanted to swim onto the boat. A pot of soup has already been thrown into chaos within Akalef. The newly formed regime, together with the islands in the Southern Ocean, will land and capture the island in no more than 5 days. Order to set sail quickly, Chief Director. The captain of the first merchant ship, the Kai, urgently urged the master to sleep. Situ Chin stood in front of the railing, pointing his finger at the group of ragged people below. "Dakai, you have also seen that there are many of our compatriots here. Once we leave like this, they will become targets of the new regime." Captain Dakai said, "But Director, you should know that Akalef himself has already fled to the ends of the earth. When he was in power, many overseas Chinese were his supporters. If we show great compassion today and let those people board the ship, who will ensure our safety? Let's not talk about how many anti-forces are mixed in among these people, just the overseas Chinese. Look. They continue to flock into the dock from behind, and with just a few of our ships, how many people can you take away? It's okay if we don't bring them back then, we'll be buried with hundreds of people." At this moment, Tingwu approached and advised. "Director, Captain Dakai is right. We cannot let go of the bigger picture just because of temporary kindness. If we act kindly and let those overseas Chinese board the ship, it may attract hostility from the new regime and even face the risk of sinking. We cannot gamble everyone's lives. All we can do now is evacuate as soon as possible and report the details to the higher authorities, so that they can send people to connect with the new regime." While Situ was hesitating in his sleep, an 8 or 9-year-old little girl suddenly burst into the cabin, shouting loudly. "Dad, Dad, I'm going down to pick up my good friends. They all cry and want me to take them away from here. They say they miss their homeland and want to go back and visit them. They also say they want to come to our house to play and not stay here, saying that someone is trying to harm them." Not long after, a beautiful young woman chased after her and shouted to the little girl, "Hey Xiaoye, come back. What are you doing with the adults? Come back to the cabin." This beautiful young woman is wearing a straw-woven fisherman's hat and a sky-blue floral long skirt, under my feet, stepping on a white flat English style. Under the call of the sea breeze, the sky-blue carved flower long skirt fluttered slowly, like a heavenly maiden descending to earth, extremely pleasing to the eye. Dad, why don't we get them on board quickly? Our ship is so big that it can hold many people. Look at how they all want to get on board. I've heard others say that someone is trying to harm them. Can you help them? The little girl grabbed Situ's big hand and shook it from side to side, pleading bitterly. Situ's sleeping quarters were already furious, but at this moment he even let his daughter out to act recklessly. Suddenly, he became angry and pointed at the beautiful young woman, cursing loudly. Leah, you can't even see a child well. Let her run out, and when you encounter any danger, don't cry and ask me for a daughter. Leah quickly walked up to apologize, then picked up the little girl and forcibly brought her back to the cabin. The little girl being held kept wriggling and struggling to resist, while crying loudly. Mom, you let me down, I don't want to go back. Dad, you big bad guy, you cold-blooded and ruthless big bad guy. Why don't you save yourself when you die? They are all so pitiful, I don't want a dad like you. Mom, please ask Dad to save them, okay? You let me down. Situ's hand was pinching the railing, but due to excessive force, the railing was unexpectedly broken, and his hand was also scratched, emitting drops of blood. Tengu stood on the side, seeing everything in his eyes. Abandon the shore and set sail. Situ Chin left a faint message and turned to head towards the cabin. How helpless he was at this moment, although he did not witness his fellow countrymen being mistreated one by one, he could imagine how cruel that scene would be. The captain who received the order immediately waved a big flag and shouted loudly. All ships, set sail. Woo! A low whistle sounded throughout the entire dock and bund, and a group of merchant ships left the shore in front of everyone, heading towards the Southern Ocean and heading towards it. Chapter 8. Passing through disaster areas. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Crystal light and blue waves shimmer, the lotus flowers in the lake are new. On the second day of the closure, Uncle Yuan had just come down from the second floor on the east side of the courtyard when he faintly heard someone humming in the garden. Humph, just as I was about to look for you everywhere, I ended up falling into a trap. So he hurried and strode towards the garden. At this moment, a young man was sitting in the pavilion. When he heard someone walking behind him, he quickly threw away a few willow branches he was holding in his hand, and then turned his head to show a smiling face. Uncle Yen, why are you so idle today? You're not here on weekdays. Uncle Yuan snorted coldly, it's rare to see you once. How could I leave now? I don't know where you're going all day, so you can also help the restaurant. Coincidentally, it's the end of last month. Follow me to the warehouse to count the inventory. The young man was worried about having nothing to do, so he readily agreed to Uncle Yuan. Uncle Yen, you have to plan well this time. The big yams you bought last time were too many. They were not easy to sell. And the dried olive beans and golden loquats were too few, and they ran out in a few days. Oh my, the stinky kid even taught me a lesson. Uncle, you must have played the one in his heart. Since you are so reasonable, why don't you give me advice? The people who come to the restaurant to eat are different every day, how can you determine what they want to eat? Besides, preparing more ingredients that can be stored for a long time won't hurt the overall situation. Nature is not afraid of having too many, I'm just afraid of having too few. It's not enough, the young thief laughed, that's what I said, uncle. Uncle Yuan sneered, when did you care about the restaurant's business? You just wanted to profit more from it. Don't think I don't know. The more goods you buy, the more benefits you can get from it. The young man gritted his teeth and laughed, Uncle is a wise person. It's not easy for us who work hard for a living. Let's not say these hurtful words anymore. I'm too lazy to argue with you. Uncle Yuan snorted coldly and then turned around and walked out of the pavilion. Uncle is waiting for me, said the young man, chasing after him. Before long, the two of them had already counted the goods in the warehouse and then walked towards the fish pond. Between twists and turns, almost all inventory was counted. Have you memorized all the ingredients you were asked to remember? Half of the seafood will be delivered by designated suppliers. You have to personally choose and buy a series of unique items such as the South China Sea octopus, deep sea biscuit, little dragon dolphin, and golden ribbon. Yesterday, I went to some places with my husband and bought some fresh items. You must go and bring back so much. The restaurant will open tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. Uncle, let go of 120 hearts and promise not to fall to the ground to bring it back to you. The young man patted his chest and promised, then pretended to ponder and said. However, the things Uncle mentioned later are all rare, and we are also facing a fishing ban, so the price will definitely rise. Although Nanwan is not far from us, it is still 500 to 600 kilometers away. Along the way, we will inevitably have to change their water once or twice, and the cost of this journey. You need to allocate more. According to my calculations, it will be 30,000 more than your original budget, and this matter will come to fruition. 30,000. Aren't you robbing me? Uncle Yuan exclaimed in shock upon hearing this. He had long anticipated that this stinky guy wouldn't handle things so easily. If he did, he would have to negotiate a price. I've calculated. Last month, you made more than 100,000 yuan in this channel of purchasing goods, not including some of your expenses in other places. How come? You've been spending it all so quickly. You're such a big spender, so don't be afraid of your husband knowing. If he knows, he'll definitely peel off your skin. The young man held Uncle Yuan in his arms and said, if you don't say it, I won't say it. There are no 6 ears in this room. No matter how divine the boss is, he can't detect it. Uncle played a role in pushing away the young man and said, you're the one who bought this guy. As for how to open that order, I don't care, but if you reveal any flaws, hee. Sir, if you don't punish me, I will be the first to settle the accounts with you. After finishing speaking, he shook his body and walked straight away. Good uncle, take your time. Uncle, have a smooth journey. The young man happily bid farewell to Uncle Yuan from behind. Immediately, he rushed into the restaurant, took the car key, and then laughed loudly as he drove a small truck into the bustling city road. However, this young man has a very silly name, called Xiaomu. It was already past 3 o'clock in the afternoon when Xiaomu drove a small truck on the highway for almost half of the journey. He was about to find a parking area to rest for a while when he suddenly saw traffic maintenance about 2 kilometers ahead. Seeing this, he quickly reduced the speed to 30 or 40. When the car approached the traffic maintenance point, he found that the straight road had been blocked, and a prominent sign stood beside it. Disaster-stricken area ahead. Please take the Manpu South Expressway and take a detour. Disaster area. Where did the disaster area come from? Why haven't I heard of it? Xiaomu drove the car forward again and met a police officer. Hello comrade, may I ask, where did a disaster occur in this clear sky with thousands of miles and scorching sun above my head? The sheriff immediately cursed and said, a worm has entered the little egghead Gord's mind. You don't know the big news, if the Tanlong earthquake doesn't shake you away, it's because God opened his eyes. The Tanlong earthquake. Xiaomu suddenly woke up and said, I wonder why Uncle Yen has been closed these past 2 days. It turns out that's why. So he reached into the drawer in the passenger compartment, took out a beautiful silver card, and threw it into the hands of the police officer. Thank you, comrade. Come find me for dinner, it's a great gift. Then he swung the front of the car and got off the highway. The sheriff blinked a few times, picked up a small card, and looked at it carefully. The VIP card of the 10-9 Lixiang restaurant. After the card, there is another string of characters with the address of the restaurant written on it. Xiaomu got off the highway and found a restaurant to farm. Then, he pondered which road to choose to get closer to Nanwan. If you want to go to Nanwan, the coastal area is a must-pass place, unless you seek distance and bypass the other two cities. That must be a foolish move. Why don't I go first to the seaside and then find a way around Tanlong? This will greatly shorten the journey. Yes, that's the decision. At present, Xiaomu left Manpu and headed towards the seaside. Everyone has a heart of pity, and people also have a heart of curiosity. When Xiaomu first arrived at the boundary of Tanlong, he was shocked by the scenery here. Suddenly, waves surged in his heart and he wanted to go into the disaster area to have a look. Coincidentally, the area he went to was not under lockdown and control, as if the disaster situation was lighter than elsewhere. Park the car aside and slowly walk to the ruins. The towering buildings of the past are now shattered into powder. Looking at the scorched earth in front of him, Xiaomu felt heartfelt sadness. For some reason, at this moment, he felt a chill in his heart, which gradually turned into a scorching heat, until it burned to the upper Dantian Naiwan Palace. The efforts put in for a lifetime only end up in vain. Born into human nature, why is it so insignificant? Xiaomu clenched his fist, feeling increasingly resentful. But then he smiled bitterly and said, no matter how angry I am, what can I do? Just as he was about to withdraw and leave, a gray little dog suddenly jumped out of the ruins, barking wildly at him. Not only that, the little dog ran to Xiaomu's feet and started running around, then bit his pants and tore them apart, pulling them to one side. Xiaomu was surprised and quickly kicked him away, retreating quickly. The little dog seemed unwilling to give up and continued to chase after it. Soon, it bypassed Xiaomu and blocked the car door of the small cargo, barking fiercely at him again. Xiaomu was secretly surprised and said, "How did it know I was going to get on the car?" Seeing Xiaomu standing still, the little dog suddenly stopped barking and instead stuck out its half-foot-long tongue, wagging its tail. "Good dog, you're playing with me." Xiaomu cursed loudly and slowly approached the little dog. Seeing the little dog no longer barking at him, Xiaomu attached himself and went to touch the dog's head. After playing around for a while, he became familiar with the little dog, who kept licking the little wood. "Are you asking for help with something?" Picking up the little dog, Xiaomu always felt that dogs have human nature and will never entangle with him for no reason. The little dog barked a few times, as if there was something he wanted to say to Xiaomu. Xiaomu tried to put down the puppy, but as soon as he put it down, the puppy rushed towards the ruins and then turned around to shout at Xiaomu. This move was repeated 4 or 5 times in a row. Xiaomu was curious in his heart and said, "Does he want to lure me to save people?" As expected, every time Xiaomu followed a few steps, the little dog would run forward a bit, and every time he followed a few steps, the little dog would run forward again. Chapter 9. Middle-aged women. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As the puppy climbed over the dilapidated housing market, it arrived in front of a 3-story building that had not yet completely collapsed. "Is this here?" Looking at the building in front of me, the small wooden piece must have been a government building because of its grand and extensive construction, and the solid frame. If it had been built with a lot of effort, otherwise it wouldn't have been preserved so well in this disaster, already reduced to ashes. Arriving here, the little dog spun around on the ground a few times, then barked twice before jumping into the building again. Although the road is difficult to walk, it is like walking on a flat ground. Koki is different, he stumbled and scratched his clothes behind him. The broken steel bars, cables all over the ground, and furniture in a mess became his biggest obstacle to progress. But since you're here, let's move forward to the end. Climbing over the wall and picking up shoes, despite the difficulty, Xiaomu finally reached the deepest part inside. I saw that this place was quite empty, like a conference hall. Following the direction of the little dog running, Xiaomu turned his head and saw a middle-aged woman being pressed down on her legs by a large stone pillar. The woman's face was covered in stains, and there were bloodstains at the corners of her mouth. There were 2 visible tears, like a long dried riverbed. Ah! Help me! Help me out! The woman was momentarily stunned when she saw someone coming, and then her eyes immediately refreshed like waves surging again. Where is the bed of tears that has been dry for a long time? I saw a continuous stream of tears, and she even cried. All living beings in the world fear death. Small as ants, big as kunpeng. Fearless of the dead, gold, stone, water, fire, earth, steel, copper, and glass. This sentence is excerpted from the Supreme Void and the Great Vaginous True Word Record. How long have you been suppressed here? Xiaomu walked up to the woman and crouched down, asking. 2 days. The weak voice of women is like a flowing thread, and when the wind blows, it will break away. Xiaomu looked around and then walked to one end of the big pillar to lift it. It seems that this pillar weighs at least 1,000 pounds and there are no long pry bars or roller ropes here. What should we do? Pacing back and forth, I couldn't think of any solution. While he was pondering, the cracks on the floor suddenly caught his attention. Walking forward, Xiaomu squatted down and observed carefully, using his hands to pick up the relatively loose fragments. It seems that all of this is filled with coarse mortar below. I know what to do. After having a solution in his heart, Koki stood up and instructed the woman. Don't move here, I'll find some tools. If I come back and see you dead, no one will bury you in the wasteland. After speaking, he turned around and walked out from the original path. The little dog was afraid that Xiaomu would not come back again, so it followed outside with all its might. After searching for a while, Xiaomu arrived at a rundown supermarket. It was dirty and had a lot of food and water. He picked out some of them, found a bag, and packed them all together. Although only 3 or 2 tools were found, they could still come in handy, such as hammers, shovels, hoes, and so on. So he returned with a full load. Fortunately the women were also awake, and this trip was not a waste of work. I think your stomach is already empty. If you can eat it, eat some, and drink water. Xiaomu tore up some food by hand and fed it to the woman, then filled the lid with water and brought it to her mouth, which can be described as extremely delicate. After a moment, he picked up a big hammer and smashed it onto the ground at one end of the pillar. After several hammers, the floor tiles were almost broken. Then he began to dig with a hoe, then with a shovel. Repeating it 10 or so times, and finally, a small pit that could fit into his body was completed. Xiaomu sat on the ground panting heavily. Remember, I'll use my body to lift this big pillar later. Just hear me say, go, and then you'll use all your strength to climb out. If this fails, even the immortals won't be able to save you. The woman nodded and revealed 2 rows of clean teeth, smiling quite beautifully. After resting for a while, Xiaomu lay down and crawled into the pit. I saw him with his elbows propped on the ground, his back facing the sky, and his knees bent like a toad tightly. He clenched his 5 fingers and shouted for strength. Suddenly, the veins on his forehead burst out. Like a dragon in power, ready to break through the sea and soar into the sky. Give it to my buddy. Xiaomu bared his teeth and kept delivering strength to his elbow. The big pillar is like a mountain, motionless as before, and after a few minutes, it still remains ineffective. Hey buddy. Get up. Even though the skin on his elbow and wrist was worn and bleeding, Koki showed no intention of giving up and instead worked even harder. So, another 5 minutes passed. Suddenly, Xiaomu felt a lump of fire in his chest. The fire was getting hotter and hotter, slowly spreading all over his body, as if it was about to burst out and burn him down. Tightly, his eyes began to turn red and his whole body was in unbearable pain. But Xiaomu didn't care, only gritted his teeth and then exerted force. Hey buddy. Get up. Gradually, the Zhu began to tremble, then it gradually rises. Suddenly, Xiaomu let out a loud cry. Let's go. Middle-aged women are not negligent at all. No matter who picks the flowers when they bloom, even if they can no longer walk on the ground in the second half of their lives. Today, they must leave here. Boom, there was a muffled sound, and the pillar was covered again, causing a wave of flying dust to rise. It's blurry and can't see anything clearly. The woman suddenly turned around and exclaimed in surprise, "Your benefactor, how are you?" The smoke and dust were rolling, and no one could see clearly in front of her. The woman could only close her hand to her chest and pray to heaven. Shakyamuni, open your eyes and let your elder brother come out. I will surely bring you a fragrant fragrance every day. After a while, as the smoke and dust slowly dissipated, Xiaomu lay motionless in the pit. Benefactor, benefactor, how are you? Speak up. If I die because of you, it's not worth it. The woman was extremely anxious and quickly propped up her hands to climb to the pit. But Xiaomu still lay quietly, without any response. The woman couldn't help but cry and was about to use her hands to drag the little wood out. Just as she was grabbing Xiaomu's hand, she suddenly heard a subtle heavenly sound, "I'm not dead yet, it's just a dry mouth and weak tongue." The woman's face was beaming with joy, revealing her pure white teeth. When she looked at her, she had a unique charm. If she had not encountered this situation, she might have washed her face clean, or perhaps she had another unparalleled beauty disaster. Any communication object that relies on signals for survival has become the most useless scrap here. On the eve of dusk, Xiaomu gave the woman a simple bandage on her thigh, thinking to make sure to take her out of here before it gets dark. There are no warm beds or streetlights here. What's unique is the unpleasant smell that makes one feel nauseous. Hurry up, don't leave before dark, I don't want to leave here again in this life. Xiaomu picked up the middle-aged woman and hurriedly ran out. But when he walked out, he suddenly discovered a major problem, which was that when he came in here, he forgot to mark it. Fake. Looking at the ruins in all directions, the little wooden heart sank into the sea, and there was no longer the initial excitement. Just as he didn't know where to step, the gray little dog suddenly jumped in front of Xiaomu and shouted a few times before running to the side. Xiaomu's eyes lit up and he quickly said to the little dog, "Good dog, lead the way." The sky is gradually turning dark, and the moon has reached its peak. Only under the brilliant Milky Way can we see the faint and turbid cloud stumbling. Xiaomu had already walked a long distance with the woman on his back. And due to the exhaustion from his body, his feet were filled with lead, making it difficult for him to move any further. Although there is a faint light visible 2 or 3 kilometers ahead, reaching there is no different from reaching the sky. The middle-aged woman noticed that Xiaomu's steps were becoming increasingly disorganized, so she spoke softly and loudly. "Let me down, I know you've reached your limit. No matter how hard you hold on, you'll die before I die. I'm not dead yet, so I'll be strangled by you. Let go." Perhaps due to being present, Koki didn't feel that death was too scary at this moment, but rather felt that the woman's hand was holding her too tightly. The woman's cheeks were flushed, and she quickly relaxed her hand tightly wrapped around Xiaomu's neck. "Sorry, I just felt your body was warm, so I unconsciously hugged you," she said. Due to her weak and powerless body, the woman deliberately pressed her mouth close to Xiaomu's ear when speaking. Xiaomu couldn't bear her blowing like this, her bones were limp, and she almost fell to the ground. "When you speak, stay away from my ears. I can't guarantee that I won't do the next animal behavior." The woman dared not speak much anymore, only quietly pressed against the back of the little wooden figure, feeling the warmth emanating from his body, making her extremely comfortable. After walking nearly 100 meters, Xiaomu suddenly felt a chill in his body and turned black in front of him. He and the woman fell to the ground together. "Brother!" The woman panicked and quickly got up to check Xiaomu. How could this? When the woman's hand touched Xiaomu's body, she found that Xiaomu's whole body was as cold as ice. So she quickly opened Xiaomu's mouth, pressed her own mouth against it, and performed CPR on Xiaomu. Chapter 10. Red Cracks. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. It can be repeated 10 times without any effect, and women are becoming increasingly anxious, completely unsure of what to do. Just as she was pinning her last hope on shouting, "Help," suddenly her eyes lit up and she called out to the nearby little dog. "Good dog, go find someone, go." The little dog, as if understanding human language, started running. More than 10 minutes later, a team of people were indeed found. Some holding stretchers, some carrying medicine boxes, and anyway, they had all kinds of rescue tools. Hurry up. 8356, transport oxygen, 2749, electric shock. Under the command of an elder, the rescue soldiers successfully rescued the two and sent them together to the temporary shelter on the coast. Later, by chance, when Xinghe Yuan and the members of the Red Tent Society went to comfort the victims in the shelter, they found Xiaomu and transferred him from the coastal shelter to the first hospital of Manpu. From then on, Xiaomu stayed in the ward of Manpu Hospital. According to the diagnosis provided by the hospital, Koki only injured his internal organs due to cold invasion and excessive fatigue, and he himself was not seriously affected. He only needed a few days of rest to improve. On that day, Xuyuyan and Shutu arrived at the first hospital of Manpu. "Sir, just now I asked the doctor, and he said that Xiaomu's body is no longer seriously affected. After a few days' rest, he can recover as usual. You don't need to worry too much." Uncle Yuyan walked in from outside the ward and said. Shu Tu gently placed his 4 fingers on Xiaomu's wrist and quietly probed his pulse. "What kind of miraculous medicine did the stinky guy take? Not only is his body fine, but his posture has also improved even better." Uncle Yuyan smiled on the side and said, "It seems that Mr. Zhao has learned a lot from him. He even knows how to diagnose his pulse and seek medical advice. Although I don't understand, his expression seems even more vivid than before." Shu Tu waved his hand and said, "He's lucky this time. If it weren't for the rescue team, he wouldn't have died in Tanlong. He wouldn't have weighed his own weight and become a great hero." Uncle Yuyan felt a little guilty and started blaming himself. "It's my fault. I let him run to Nanwan alone, and there wasn't anyone to take care of him on the way." Shu Tu said, "This matter has nothing to do with you, it's just that you're fine now." The two of them accompanied for a while, but suddenly there was a knock outside the door, and 2 young women came in. Both of them greeted Shu Tu and Shu Yuyan. "Two uncles, why don't you go back first? Qiuyun and I will stay here for a while. When he wakes up, I will tell you." Shu Tu smiled without hesitation and said, "Okay, then I'll trouble Miss Situ. Unfortunately, I happen to have a banquet tomorrow, so I have to rush back to Gaoming." "Uncle, just go ahead. I asked the doctor, it's nothing here. He'll wake up soon after sleeping." After saying goodbye, Situ Jingyue walked up to Xiaomu's bed and sat down. She then ordered Yaqiuyan to wash some of the food and fruits she had bought and set them aside before talking to Xiaomu on the bed. "I don't know what you think. That woman is neither your relatives or friends nor your brother or sisters. Why should she sacrifice herself to save her? If you die, I will not go to your grave to incense you." Speaking, he lightly tapped Xiaomu's hand again. In the evening, Xiaomu suddenly woke up from his dream and sat up. "I just dreamt that someone had pierced my heart with an arrow, and I couldn't escape. Fortunately, I woke up and was spared the torment of pain. Although it was a dream, the pain in the dream was real and true." Out of curiosity, Xiaomu half untied his shirt to explore the truth. "This. What is this?" On my chest, there were several clear blood-red cracks prominently visible. This crack looks like a branch, with a main trunk and branches, long, short, and uneven distribution. And deep inside the main trunk, there seems to be blooming flesh, but there is no blood flowing out from there. What's even more strange is that since he woke up, his chest no longer hurts, but he feels relaxed, energetic, and refreshed like never before. At that moment, he jumped up from the bed, feeling as light as a swallow and as agile as a flying phoenix. Bang! Due to excessive force, Xiaomu's head hit the roof directly and then fell heavily to the ground. However, he didn't feel any pain and just lightly supported his back, causing him to stand upside down. I'm still dreaming, right? Koki couldn't believe it was him. He didn't know how to fight at all. How could he wake up and... Could it be the reason for this crack in his chest? Koki didn't care how much he guessed, but slowly he stabilized his balance and withdrew his 4 fingers, using only one finger to support the ground, surprisingly sturdy as a pillar, just and straight. My little ancestor, my little ancestor. Koki sighed at himself with an incredulous expression on his face. Putting down his feet and standing up as usual, suddenly Xiaomu slapped a cup on the table. Bang! I only heard a sound of glass shattering, and the cup was like flying catkins, drifting all over the sky. The noise in the ward alarmed a young nurse on duty, so she quickly ran to the front of the ward and knocked. Ward 3, what are you doing inside? After waiting for a while, seeing no response, the little nurse pushed the door in directly. But everything inside went as usual, and the patient was sleeping peacefully. Approaching the hospital bed again, he glanced around and found that the cup originally placed on the bedside table was broken and spilled all over the ground. Immediately, the little nurse looked up at the roof and found that the wall above had peeled off a layer of lime, and there were several visible cracks. Patient number 3, please get up and stop pretending to sleep. It was early at night, and the room was incredibly quiet. Even if a cup was broken or a needle landed, one could hear it clearly. However, the patient in bed was soundly asleep without any intention of waking up. Do you want me to be violent, or do you want me to report this matter and say that there is something supernatural happening in this room, imprisoning you for observation? Seeing the patient continuing to pretend to be asleep, the little nurse began to get a little angry. Koki pretended to be tired and slowly opened his eyes, stuttering. Is it dawn now? Hey! Who are you? What are you doing here? The little nurse sneered and planned to turn around and leave. Seeing this, Xiaomu quickly jumped out of bed and stopped the little nurse, with a speed faster than a dog pouncing on its bones. What are you doing? Is it impolite? I dare not, it's just tonight's event. Just treat it as if you haven't seen it. As if I haven't seen it. What if I don't? The little nurse said playfully. If you don't, then as you wish, it's disrespectful to you. Koki's gaze was cunning, revealing a greedy expression. Then you can give it a try. The little nurse slapped Xiaomu's face as she spoke. But now Xiaomu is not the same as before. More appropriately, after rescuing a middle-aged woman, he has changed and become a very powerful person. Pop. Xiaomu gently lifted his hand and grabbed the palm waved by the little nurse. I have something to say, otherwise I'll push you down on the bed. The little nurse chuckled lightly, then lifted her knee and pulled it into Xiaomu's abdomen. Koki's reaction was also extremely fast, and he quickly took out his right hand to block it. I didn't expect you to do 2 more moves. The little nurse snorted coldly, why so much? Koki had already reached out with both hands, and there was no third hand. The little nurse was seizing this opportunity and turned her spare hand into a fist, pressing straight towards the wooden front teeth. Thunderbolt couldn't cover his ears, and Xiaomu quickly leaned back. The little nurse cleared the air and thrust her body forward, pressing against Xiaomu's body. Xiaomu's strength was uneven, and he put one hand around the nurse's waist before falling to the ground. Coincidentally, the little nurse's cherry lips happened to align with Xiaomu's mouth. The little nurse widened her eyes and looked incredulously at the even more beautiful eyes in front of her.